Tammie, one thing that I really appreciate that you had an experience where you were dealing with a life and death situation when it came to your daughter, Jaden. And so you experienced that groaning, that tugging on of heaven in such a deep, intimate way. Can you share a little bit of your story and your testimony? Because I know when I read it, it was just so encouraging and so inspiring and just really points the picture of how we're able to partner with heaven in these ways when it just looks like our backs are up against the wall, but we trust in him and that we cry out and we groan and we allow the Holy Spirit within us to take over in our situations.
Yeah, in that situation with Jaden, it was it was multiple situations that led to basically her being within moments of death. And so the first part of this is that she actually puts her arm through a window. She sustains a major injury, is bleeding out. That's our first miracle. God actually stopped the bleeding while we had to wait 15 minutes on the ambulance to arrive. But they did not treat her with antibiotics, so she went septic. She ended up in septic shock, multi-organ system failure. And we ended up in critical care, critical in the pediatric hospital here in Atlanta. But before that, if I were to rewind back, the Lord had been teaching me this strategy of how to sit with Him in the heavenly realms and stand against the accusations of the enemy, not in warfare with the enemy, but knowing that the enemy is a liar and how to dethrone his lies, in other words, and believe the truth of who God says I am, who God says others are, etc. And I teach a little bit about that in the book. And so it's interesting the timeline that I go through this because I had already been developing this history with God and this understanding of how to fight the battle of the Lord, not with carnal weapons, not fighting with carnal weapons. And so in this series of 8 days, she flatlined several times. Her pulse, her pulse and her blood pressure both dropped. If you know anything about the medical reality of that, that's near death to death. And she is in kidney failure, liver failure, and heart failure. And so throughout this process, yes, there's the tears and there's travail, but it's actually when God taught me how to pray on the other side of words. It's when God taught me how to sit and stay. It's when God taught me allowed me to have hands-on understanding of how to sit in Ephesians 2:6 and move from the place of being seated with him in heavenly places to press my ear to heaven and see what is he praying, what is he saying, and what is he doing. And so when you begin to pray what God is saying and what he is doing, you know that you're praying the perfect prayer of heaven. Therefore, it will be done for you on the earth as it is in heaven. And so, in this experience with her, seeing several moments where she would have lost her life, God showed me exactly how to pray. He showed me exactly we had a text thread between our family members. We were putting things out on social media, exactly strategic targeted prayers. For example, I need you guys to pray their pulse comes up to, this many beats per minute, that her blood pressure comes up to this many beats per minute. We're seeing the sepsis return. There's a rash across her body. Her fingers are turning blue. We're going to begin to stand against this in the heavenly realms. And it's almost like the strategic warfare that the Lord began to unpack, but it was not in the place of fear. And this is why this is so important. I'm not giving us a formula because people will, they've lost their children and it's extremely painful situation. I believe it's the mercy of God that he did not allow our child to die, and I'm able to stand on this side of it. But at the same time, there is something that he's teaching. He's teaching through this how to trust him when all hell is breathing down your neck, when accusations are being launched in your face, where the lies of the enemy say that you will lose, of how to stand where he's called you to stand and look above that warfare. And so, again, I talk about this a good bit in the book, but throughout this process, it was literally learning how to stand outside of the realities that were in our faces and pray from the place of the truth of seated with him in heavenly spaces.